didn't bother me. Would I go back to work at that facility? What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Risa B, and in today's video I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the work trip that I took in September of last year. If you don't already know, I work for a biotech company, and last year we were acquired by a larger company, and so I was a part of the team that was tasked with helping our assay and technology get up and running at one of their facilities, and that facility happened to be in Texas, and so I was one of the people who traveled there to help get that up and running. This was my first time working in a very big corporation lab. Okay, so company acquisition, what does that mean? So I'm not sure if I mentioned it here before, but this is actually my second time being a part of a company that has been acquired by a larger company, and in short, it just means my company was bought out by a larger company. This larger company is a national, well-known company, so it was a pretty big deal for my company that was less than 2 years old to be bought by such a large corporation and wanting them to invest in our technology and our people and things like that. And that is the goal for a lot of biotech companies. There's plenty of biotech company startups here in my area, and the goal is to eventually be able to sell the company for millions, billions of dollars and move on. And normally I would say the founders in this area anyway tend to start companies, sell them, start more companies. So it's just a cycle of starting, selling, starting, selling, starting, selling. A long cycle here in the Maryland, Baltimore area. One thing that is unique, like I just mentioned, when my company was bought out, we were less than 2 years old, and we only have one testing available. We have a very specific and unique assay that we have developed and validated and proven to work. So this large company was purely investing or buying our company for this technology specifically so that they can also incorporate this with their testing, bring in more revenue, etc., etc. From what I've seen, when companies get acquired, one or two things can happen. The company that was acquired will either fully take on that bigger company or new company's name, and that is what they are. They integrate, they do all the things that they're supposed to do to fit in or to follow what that company has. Or the company that was bought out is kind of like a subsidiary of the larger company, so you may still have that company going by its original name, but they're technically a part of the larger company. So for example, you could have a company called Biogene Diagnostics, now a part of Johnson & Johnson. So it can be one or two of those things. Both companies that I've worked with that have gotten acquired have gone with the latter. So they are kind of still owning or backing their own name, but they are now a part of that bigger company. So they operate as that company, if that makes sense. Okay, so why travel to Texas? I went to Texas for two things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is running tests and PQ tests and things like that. So originally I was supposed to go to Texas for, I believe, 2 to 3 weeks. I can't remember, but it ended up turning into about 4 to 5 weeks of me actually being there. And I was not the only person who went to Texas, a part of this team to get them up and running, but I was the only person who stayed for as long as I did and consecutively as I did. So I went to Texas and I did not come back until it was time for me to come back, where some other people were flying down for a couple of days and they would fly back home, fly back down for a little bit, go do something else, and then fly back and forth. So I personally just didn't want to fly back and forth. I really don't like flying, so if I don't have to fly, I prefer not to, you know what I mean? I'm not saying I prefer a road trip, because I don't like road trips either, but if I could just stay down there, that was fine with me. So that's what I did, and they basically told me, if I ever have to come home for something, if I want to come home for something, I take care of something, whatever the case may be, I could fly back, do what I need to do, and then go back to Texas. But I was fine with just going down there and just staying down there. So the first couple of weeks there, I was basically running test and PQ tests, which is pre-qualification tests. And so when I got there, the robots have already been set up and programmed by our technical operations team. And so I was there because I'm one of the people who obviously know how to run the assay, know what reagents are needed, know how to make the master mixes, know how to run the programs, know how to handle the samples, etc. So that's why I was there. And I'm also the person in charge of reagents at my current facility. I think I've mentioned this before. So I was also helping the Texas facility get their reagents together, QC testing their reagents and things like that. So it was kind of like a 2-in-1 type of thing that I was doing there. And with the pre-qualifications, you have just various tests that you're running. For example, the first week that I was there, I was supposed to run 2 8-sample runs. The following week, cross-contamination run, which is a run with positive and negatives and a grid chart pattern. That way you're kind of testing to see how the robot does with keeping the samples pure and not contaminating samples, so exactly what it sounds like, cross-contamination, just various tests like that, QC testing of the reagents to make sure things work. And of course, things did not go smoothly, which is not too surprising. When we were validating at our lab here in Maryland, things also didn't go smoothly and timelines got pushed back, because that's just how things happen in life. Things just don't always go smoothly. I don't think there were any reagent issues, but it was mainly, I think, robotic issues that just had to constantly be fixed. But yeah, these issues are what contributed it to my time getting extended there. For example, like I said, the first week I was supposed to run 2 8-sample runs and have it completed. One went really well, one did not. So at the end of the week, I had to try and rerun a sample run. I still think after that one robot was still not doing that well. So I was able to move forward with cross-contamination for the good robot, but then we were still held up on the 8-sample run with the bad robot. So that's why things just don't always go according to plan. That's how things are in the lab. So that's how that got pushed back. And then once it finally got up and running, we got the runs through, samples went good, reagents did good. The next thing that we had to do was do QC testing of their reagents. So while I was doing PQ testing of the robot, we were using reagents that we had sent from our lab to their lab because we knew those reagents were already QC tested and that they worked fine. There should be no issues with it theoretically. So once the robots were proven to work good at their facility, now it was time to use their reagents and make sure that their reagents worked just as good as our reagents. So I worked with them to gather all their reagents, make sure they had the right reagents, the right quantities, and also show them the process of how to determine how much reagents you need, how many of what needs to be QC'd, how it has to be QC'd, how the forms are filled out, how to analyze the data and determine if the reagents actually pass the way that they say they're supposed to do. So yeah, it's kind of like a long process. You can understand how this could take multiple weeks on end because our testing is a 2-day process. So that's why, and it can be 3 days depending on how long certain days are. So it's a 2 to 3 day process of testing. So you can imagine that when one thing is not going well or something gets pushed back, you're getting pushed back multiple days and not just like one day. So once all of the PQ and technical programming and things were finalized and proven to work, the next thing that we moved on to was training. And training is exactly what it sounds like. It was me training the people or the operators who will be in Texas on how to run the assay. So that is going from documentation preparation, showing them how to get their reagents together, how to know what reagents to pull, making their samples and preparing their sample plates, putting it onto the robot, selecting the right program, as well as doing the proper maintenance of the robot. So the robots that we use requires daily maintenance and weekly maintenance. So showing them those steps. And yeah, it's basically just like it sounds. It's just like training at my current facility where I help train some of the techs there. So it wasn't terrible once you kind of finally got to the training part. Of course, again, there's bumps in the road when you're doing things with very new people who this assay, I would say, is very different from the other tests that they run in their facility. This assay is very precise, it's very time consuming. There's so many reagents, there's very many nuances and time constraints, just troubleshooting and common things like that I was responsible for showing them. And originally I was not going to be the only one training them. We had it set up basically based where, like I was saying, the first week I was going to be there by myself running the PQ, or the first part of the PQ. The second week someone else was going to come down and they would be helping me running the second part of the PQ because cross-contamination is a lot. And then the third week would be training and someone was going to help me train them. But like I said, things got pushed back, so I ended up training by myself, and that was kind of a lot because the facility in Texas has 2 of each robot. So I'm trying to train 2 people at one time on 2 separate systems, if that makes sense. So it can be a lot when you're trying to diligently watch 2 people doing 2 things at the same time, or one person's going faster here, or this person's not there yet and this person wants to move on. So that's how training was. Not terrible, got through it, you know, and it was what it was. For the most part, the trip was pretty good. I have a couple of friends who stay out in Texas, so I was able to see them, hang out with them and go out with them a little bit, and also just explore the city. I did do a couple of things, like I went to Pumpkin Nights, I went to the State Fair, which was really fun. The State Fair, I mainly only got to go to like the amusement park side, which was fine with me. It's because I got there kind of late one day, but I had so much fun. I went to, I think it's called Decorator's Warehouse. I went to see the giant eyeball down in downtown Dallas. I had some barbecue. They have this great place called Salon Salada. I miss Salada so much. It's like a salad bar type of place, kind of like Chipotle but for salad, and we would get lunch there so often because it was just so good. We don't have that here in Maryland. I do miss the Salada there. And I also miss, like, the really good part about when you're going on work trips is that as far as like food and things like that, you don't have to pay for anything. So it's like a month of me not paying for gas, not paying for food, didn't have to pay like any type of lodging. The only thing I was paying for were like these activities that I was doing on the side. So I saved like a lot of money when I was there in Texas, which is why I didn't mind being there for a month, because I knew like in the long run I was saving money. I will say some of the cons around the trip are like a result from what I was describing to you guys earlier, with the timeline being pushed back due to different failures. I was working very, very long days there. I don't think I recorded too much while I was during the work week when I was in Texas, because I was literally so tired because I was working like 10, 11, 12-hour days like every day, Monday through Friday. Also because of the time difference, and also we have colleagues who work in Germany, so it's like you're trying to accommodate a time difference for people who are still in Maryland, people who are in Texas, and people who are in Germany. We will have meetings every morning to discuss basically where we were, what was happening in the lab, etc., etc., just catching everybody up. And because of that time difference, the meetings were so early in Texas. I think we were having meetings at like 5 or 6 a.m. in Texas, I think. And then I was trying to get to work by like 7, and then I was not leaving until like late in the evening. Like I said, 10, 11, 12-hour days. So by the time I would come home, I would like be so tired that during the week, I really would not do much of anything except for go to work, go to sleep, go to work, go to sleep. And I would spend these days, like I would spend my weekends like exploring. I would say another con was being in the lab that I really just wasn't familiar with. This was my first time ever working at a lab this big. Like there were hundreds of people at this lab. It was honestly kind of crazy to see. The lab that I was at, they stayed open 24/7, so they're always open. Their parking lot was always full when I got there in the morning. It was crazy. But it being a big lab, that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, I guess it kind of plays into it. The people there honestly weren't that friendly, and I'm not used to that. At my lab, we've grown a lot now, so it's like a little over 20 of us who are in like our lab space. But like I said, we have meetings with people all the time who don't work on site, and everyone at my company, I say my company like we're not all one big company now, but my company, we're all, for the most part, very friendly. We all are very helpful to each other, and I didn't get that same thing when I was in Texas. So that was the only, like, another downside was that I'm spending like, 10 to 12-hour days at this facility where the people aren't really that nice to me. And it wasn't just me, actually, everyone who honestly came down from my lab down to Texas, they all said the same thing. No one liked being there. That is why people were like coming down and flying down for a little bit and then going back home or going to do something else, or like staying for only like 2-3 days and then flying home. It's because they didn't like being down there. We all kind of had the same experience. I can count on 3 fingers the people who were actually like kind to me in that facility. So that was another negative about being in Texas. So it was really nice to go out with coworkers after work, or hang out with some friends on the weekends, or even, like I said, go exploring. Those were the only like downsides. I never mind traveling for work. Overall, it didn't bother me. Would I go back to work at that facility? I don't think so. I don't know. I wouldn't go back, but I am still in communications with them. Yeah, I don't think anyone from my lab wants to go back. Overall, I'm glad I went. It was a really good experience, good and the bad parts. It was all learning experience. So I'm glad I was able to get the opportunity to go and be a part of a team who can now say like, oh yeah, I helped get an assay up and running not only at my home site, but at another site as well. So that's what my work trip was like when I went to Texas, good and bad. If you have any other questions or you're confused by anything, please ask me down below and I'll be sure to answer you guys to give you guys some clarification on that. But that's all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.